It wasn't Buckingham Palace that confirmed it. It wasn't Clarence House. It was Princess Anne. In a moment so brief, so matter-of-fact, that you might have missed it if you blinked, she said the quiet part out loud. With her signature bluntness, she offered no fanfare, no dramatics, just truth. And that truth, that a coronation, is quietly being planned, not for Charles, but for William. And suddenly 1,000 whispered theories didn't seem so far-fetched. Because, when Princess Anne speaks, people listen. And what she just revealed changes everything. This isn't about a health scare. This isn't a scandal. This is the House of Windsor confronting its own future and doing it on its own terms. So what does it mean? When the king begins to step back before the nation is ready, before the Commonwealth is ready, the Windsors are known for silence, not statements, not outbursts, just an unwavering calm even when the ground beneath them begins to shift. But when change comes, it speaks through action, through schedules suddenly cleared, through appearances subtly reassigned, through the quiet disappearance of familiar faces, and the quiet rise of new ones. That's exactly what's been unfolding around King Charles III. Since his cancer diagnosis was made public in early 2024, the monarch has stepped back at first temporarily, and now, noticeably, he's made a handful of appearances, short ones, carefully managed. He smiles, he waves, but he doesn't stay long, and behind that thinning public presence, something else has been happening. William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, have taken on more. Not just ribbon cuttings and charity galas, but major constitutional duties. The kinds of appearances that shape the image of a working monarchy, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. There's a phrase being whispered through royal circles, a soft coronation. No trumpets, no crowns, just William, stepping forward, Catherine, standing taller, and Charles, fading ever so gently into the background. The institution is preparing, even if the public isn't. But here's the twist: the signal didn't come from the king. It came from his sister, Princess Anne, the most hardworking royal, year after year. The one who has never chased headlines, but never shied away from truth either. She's not theatrical. She's not polished. She's not political. She's trusted. So when she hinted in her quiet, razor-sharp way that things were shifting behind palace doors, the message landed hard, because Anne doesn't speak unless it matters. And this matters. In just a few carefully chosen words, she confirmed what so many had suspected but dared not say, that the reign of Charles is quietly being redefined, and that the transition to William has already begun. To understand where we're going, we need to know how we got here. For over 70 years, Charles waited, longer than any heir in British history, a life spent in the shadow of a mother who reigned through war, scandal, and seismic cultural change and never once wavered. For decades, he was a prince in waiting, not quite sovereign, not quite silent. His every move scrutinized, criticized, compared to the gold standard. That was Queen Elizabeth II. And then, in September 2022, everything changed. The Queen was gone. A nation mourned. And Charles at 73 finally became king. It was a moment steeped in tradition. The black armbands, the bagpipes, the weight of a crown heavy not just with jewels, but with legacy. But it was also a moment of reckoning, because Charles didn't ascend in an age of unquestioned monarchy. He stepped into power in a Britain more fractured, more cynical, more uncertain than ever before. And from the very beginning, he seemed to carry that weight with a sense of duty and vulnerability. He wasn't trying to be his mother. He was trying to be something new, something quieter, shorter reign, longer reach. Still, the world kept watching and waiting. It became clear, even in those early days, that this reign would not be measured in decades, but in impact. That Charles's time on the throne was less about building an empire and more about handing it over in good order. And beside him, steady as ever, stood Anne, the Princess Royal, his only sister, his lifelong ally, the one who never complained, never explained, just worked. For years, she's been called the hardest working royal. But to those inside the family, she's something even more valuable: the anchor, unmoved by public opinion, unimpressed by spectacle, unshaken by crisis, and doesn't just carry out royal duties, she embodies them. And that's why, when questions began swirling about Charles's health and his future, and the whispers of William's quiet rise grew louder, Anne remained the same, unflinching, reliable, present. In private, Her bond with Charles is deeply rooted in shared experience. They've known loss together. They've navigated divorce, scandal, and the weight of an institution that doesn't allow for second chances. They've watched the monarchy evolve, sometimes painfully and always with one eye on continuity. So, when Anne speaks, especially about succession or stability, it's not speculation, it's strategy. She knows the stakes, she knows the players, and she knows the plan. Charles, ever the planner himself, isn't stepping aside impulsively. If this is a handover, it's 1 decade in the making. And Anne has always been part of that design. Now, as William and Catherine rise, and the next chapter begins to take shape, it's the older generation, Charles and Anne, who are ensuring the handoff is dignified, deliberate, and deeply royal. Not everyone wants the crown passed this way or this soon, because even in a monarchy built on bloodlines and inevitability, timing is everything. And this feels early. Yes, Charles is ill. Yes, William is capable. But the question that lingers in living rooms and behind palace walls alike is simple. Is the king truly ready to fade into the background? Or is the crown being nudged from his head before he's finished wearing it? Inside the palace, the mood is tense, not panicked, but alert. Insiders speak of a quiet friction between two distinct camps. On one side, Charles's loyal inner circle, courtiers who've served him for decades through his Prince of Wales years, through scandal, through his long wait. They believe in legacy, dignity. They believe the king should reign for as long as he can. On the other side, William's team, younger, sharper, media savvy. They're focused on modernizing the monarchy, trimming the excess, speaking directly to a generation that grew up scrolling past it. These aren't shouting matches. They're strategic disagreements. But the stakes? They couldn't be higher. Because this isn't just a family drama. It's a constitutional puzzle. There is no official blueprint for a king quietly stepping back without formally abdicating. And the phrase soft coronation may sound gentle, but behind it is a dramatic rebalancing of power. If William begins to take over key ceremonial and state roles, if Catherine becomes the monarchy's most visible symbol of grace and duty, if Charles becomes more symbolic than sovereign, then what does that make the monarchy today? And who, exactly, is running it? Legally, constitutionally, nothing changes. But emotionally, culturally, everything shifts. That's the real drama. A father who has waited his whole life for the crown, slowly letting go. A son who never rushed the throne, now stepping into its light. And between them, Princess Anne, neither heir nor monarch, but the one person both men trust without question. It's no accident that she was the one to speak. It wasn't a leak. It was a message. Anne, who rarely grants interviews. Anne, who famously rolls her eyes at gossip. Anne, who has been the backbone of the firm for decades. When she hints that preparations are underway, people listen. Not because she seeks influence, but because she carries it effortlessly. And she's not alone. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has become a force in her own right. Without speeches, without statements, she leads by simply being there. At hospitals, at schools, on red carpets and battlefields. Her absence during her own recent cancer treatment was felt deeply, not just emotionally, but institutionally. And now, as she returns to public life, it's clear, she is not just William's partner. She is the monarchy's future queen and perhaps its present heart. And still, behind all the silence, the rumors swirl that a coronation date has already been penciled in. That contingency plans, once hypothetical, are now being rehearsed. That senior aides have been instructed to begin logistical consultations with the Church of England. That rehearsals may soon be folded into official royal operations. No official confirmation, no press release, just the whisper of robes being measured and processions being planned. A coronation isn't just a ceremony. It's a declaration. It says to the world, this is our sovereign, this is the future, and this one might not wait for a funeral. That's the emotional weight hanging over Buckingham Palace right now. Not grief, not scandal, but transition. A peaceful one, but a powerful one. And for a monarchy that has survived on symbols and silence for centuries, this shift, quiet as it is, may be the most defining moment since Elizabeth's death, because what we're watching isn't the end of a reign. It's the rehearsal of another. A transfer not just of titles but of meaning. From King Charles, a man shaped by patience and purpose, to Prince William, a man shaped by loss, love, and an entirely new kind of crown. and in between them, Princess and the Sentinel, guarding the line, holding the shape, reminding the world that even when the Windsors whisper, their message still echoes. Princess Anne sat down. The room was quiet, and then she said it. No drumroll, no breaking news banner, just a camera, a chair, and a woman who doesn't waste words. It was a formal interview, part of a larger broadcast about her ceremonial role as Gold Stick in Waiting. A title that sounds almost quaint, historic. But Anne, she made it anything but ceremonial, dressed in her usual no-nonsense blazer, hair pinned back, voice low and clipped. She looked the camera squarely in the lens and said, "My role, as Gold Stick, is about protection and continuity. It always has been, especially in times of transition." The interviewer blinked, shifted in their seat, and that's when Anne leaned in just slightly. "The king is preparing, not abdicating, but preparing. That's the distinction." It hung in the air like thunder. A simple phrase, but the monarchy is built on phrases like that, not abdicating, but preparing. Within minutes, royal commentators were dissecting it word by word. News tickers across the UK picked it up. Clips of the moment went viral. There was no follow-up, no clarification, no denial from the palace, just Anne's words and the silence that followed. Royal watchers immediately understood the weight of it. "She doesn't speak unless she means to," one former aide remarked. Another said, "If Anne says transition is happening, it's because it already is." Suddenly, things made sense in reverse. William and Catherine's increased presence, the reshuffling of state duties, the polished precision of recent royal outings, ribbon cuttings, investitures, receptions, all led not by Charles, but by William. And then there were the gestures. Catherine, appearing alongside military officers representing the crown with full honors. William, delivering a speech to Parliament that would traditionally fall under the king's duties, never officially announced, but never questioned either. The signs were all there, and simply said them out loud. It wasn't just a family dynamic shifting. It was the institution reshaping itself, brick by brick. Before our eyes, the public response was split. Some were moved, others were unsettled, but almost everyone agreed. This wasn't random, because Anne doesn't go off script. She is the script. And when she invoked her title Gold Stick, a role dating back to Tudor times, charged with guarding the sovereign, it wasn't nostalgic. It was symbolic. She was saying, in her dry, understated way, "I'm watching the throne, and it's time to start watching the next one." This wasn't a farewell to Charles. It was a nod to the path ahead. In that single moment, Anne gave the monarchy something it desperately needed, not a press release, not a leaked memo, but permission to look forward. The crown doesn't shift without consequences, not in 1,000 years of monarchy, and certainly not now. What Princess Anne said may have been subtle, but the ripple effects were anything but. In Westminster, quiet conversations turned serious. Parliamentary aides began reviewing protocols, dusting off rarely used constitutional texts, not because a handover was official, but because, suddenly, it felt inevitable. Across the aisle, senior bishops in the Church of England began asking questions too. If there were to be a coronation, sooner rather than later, what shape would it take? How do you crown a monarch who is still very much alive, and another who has never formally abdicated? There's no guidebook for this kind of transition, because this isn't Edward VI's scandal, and it's not Elizabeth I's slow iron reign. This is something new. And beyond the UK, the Commonwealth was watching. In Australia and Canada, some welcomed the idea of William as the new face of the monarchy, younger, modern, a clean slate. But in places like Jamaica and Barbados, Anne's remarks reignited Republican conversations. If the crown is changing hands, one headline asked, why should we still wear it? Even within Britain, the shift stirred deep emotions. Charles, long the subject of debate and critique, suddenly inspired something softer: sympathy, because this wasn't a man being pushed aside. This was a man choosing when to let go. He began quietly stepping back from international tours. Events once assumed to be his, now hosted by William. The king was still king, but only just, and in the public eye, something else took shape: support for William and Catherine surged. Their approval ratings rose. Their appearances drew larger crowds, warmer cheers. People were no longer just admiring them, they were looking to them. But alongside admiration came anxiety. Would there be a formal announcement? Would Charles give a date, or would this slow motion shift simply continue, undefined and quiet? The press speculated constantly. Columnists called it the Phantom Coronation. Some insiders whispered about a date already chosen, one tied to tradition, perhaps in 2026, marking the king's 75th year. Inside palace walls, everything was being recalibrated. Staff were quietly reassigned. Security